Hello and welcome to the Crypto Day Morning. For today's date, Monday, 25th day of June, 2018. My name is Derek. Like always, all investment choices are amongst your own risk, own reward. For myself, risk reward and portfolio management is always job number one. I'm going to get into Bitcoin next, but let's talk about a story or figuring out that of the story. In poker, when you can find the story of the poker hand, the player, the situation, what's going on, then it makes it very easy to play through from that point on. So the story of the market before, on Feathercoin we're looking at, before the recent run up was continuous decline or bear market in that of decline. There were times where it was attempting correctionary moves. When it was in the 18, those were the only two stories that were going on after the market broke down roughly from this level of support. And then within its second, third day on the rally, after it had a very good gain or got close to north of 1800 and change, then the story was that of an attempt to revert the trend at a very aggressive, violent kind of way. Thus, what would increase such into volatility. That's why when I stated I want to see how well it can hold well above this low, basically a 61.8% correction hold is what I would be looking to see. So what's the story now? Correctionary move within such, because this is now the second day in which it has came to the newly rising 18 average. The size of such is fatter, larger, and moving a lot more wildly. That happens, of course, with those major high volatile moves. And the market needs to settle down. And each day that goes by, it settles a little bit more and more. And you really look at this on a short-term time frame after seeing a lot of this action like such. When you go to the 3-hour, what's the story? Well, the story, when you look at it just from since the point, since the event, is volatility increase. The size of the preceding candles that occurred before the event significantly smaller for every single one before, but this was the biggest one in here, and that isn't too big compared to the moves that have happened since. So now the small moves are these ones, like in here, which is within the correctionary move, and it's standard to get moves like this and this. Those are regular size candles within the move since the 21st day. And when we look at the making the story again, the story on this red candle was a breakdown point, and it did just that. And the statement was the attempt to make this a failed breakdown, because if it does what we see here, makes a move down to 1400 like such, comes up to the correctionary move where we stand. So that's the story now. Correctionary move for the attempt to make the rally from the 21st that of a failed breakout. That's what the story lies. Of course, on a bullish level, it needs to hold that level. So you could say that that's also the story. Because when we're looking for a higher low, and I think I'm going to now change this to a 400-minute time frame, then this is about a good enough area. So yes, you have the attempt in trying to break it down below here, thus failed breakout, fast move lower as a probable event. And because we can see levels of resistance that have been established, and in this case it coincides with the 18 average of highs, if any price action moves north of that, then you could say it's playing in as it's coming, or coming from a successful correctionary move. But When you have situations like this, you could almost always draw symmetrical movements into place, which means market from the point is in an up and a downtrend. So it's going to be getting to a point soon where this thing will make that decision. Now let's move on to Bitcoin. And we'll start with a very long-term time frame, that being the monthly chart. What's its story? Coming from a very good rally or leg higher, and it's in its correctionary move. It's in such for its 5th consecutive period. If it is unable to rally where bull markets you would like to expect to do so, then this will definitely start to flatten out and bring bearish possibilities, which of course would be that move to 3,000. When we look at this on a weekly chart, what's the story in here? Well, we had a great uptrend, of course, and this is the statement made on the first low to 6,000 for that of moving this into a neutral or a downtrend. 4, I've talked about reversal of trends, and in situations here, you have an uptrend. So to reverse a trend, establish a level of support, come back to the band, which did so here, and of course it eventually would do it again. Break the level is the next one. Didn't do it here. So we have further correctionary move within that situation. Now technically it has broken below on probably every single exchange of Bitcoin against the dollar, US dollar only really. And that doesn't mean much to me because it's a matching low. Anywhere near that level, a little above, a little below is a match. So this, your eyes can tell it's higher just by looking at it. At least most people could probably notice that. But it counts to me as that matching low. Of course, I've talked about symmetrical triangles within the Feather coin. This is that of a descending triangle. That's where you have a downtrend that needs to get above at least to regain the uptrend that it was having. But instead of an uptrend line, you got a flat line. Now within this uptrend, if this breaks it, there's gonna definitely be uptrends that people are going to be able to draw. And this isn't a straight line, but obviously we can say we are symmetrical right now because this uptrend line is still active and this downtrend is still active. Thus, these symmetrical moves come from a move where it has to decide if the move is going to continue or that move becomes that of a failed move. That's why I'm relatively confident as well that if 3,000 comes into play, that it's at the area of where it would find that of support and thus be looked at after the fact as a great buying opportunity. So let's continue looking at the story. Let's move to the next time frame, which is a 3-day chart. And within this, very, very similar as far as the weekly, so I'm just going to bypass that. On the daily, this has been a situation of lower highs, lower lows for quite some time. So message of the market was steady decline, the correctionary move. Obviously, the test at this point was won by the bears or the downside. And when you see these moves, all you can say is, okay, a lot of times these neutral tends tend to finish off to the path of the least resistance, or in this case, go lower because of this down move that it was having. But that just means most times, or who is, or what job or what move is favored. Because there's only two ways you're going to go from a sideways play, either up or down. But one is obviously going to be more favored than the next. It's not like flipping a coin and there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to break out or a 50-50 chance that it's going to break down. And when you're in a downtrend, when you come back to your previous last low, then there's oftentimes two cases that the bear trend will play out, and that is what we see: no support, thus making the leg lower, or it has a small rally and then does something like that instead. In most situations, markets do come back to where it comes from, and in this case it's no different because the market did go down here and then it comes to this high where it resisted the 18 average. However, what's interesting of note, when we look at the size of legs lower, this one here, it didn't have that big of a leg lower, just this. But that wasn't a failed breakdown because it resisted a lower high, and then this was a good leg lower here, as was this one. But the market rallied up to here. It's come down here. That's not that much of a leg lower, but it's still declining within the 18. After the large red down day, we now have 3 sort of pause days where it hasn't really had great rallies in getting back the losses in which it encountered. And when we look at this just even more further again, this is showing us that the level of support area here, the general area of the first low and the big support that often tested around April, start of April, end of March, is being resisted right now, and it's showing that it wants to break down. So that's what the story is, but we can see over the last few days, because the last leg lower, which is the current one, isn't that big of a leg lower, and it's holding on. It's almost like it's fighting to stop its big fall, but you realize if it takes one big shot in the face, sort of like a boxer or MMA fighter would go through, it could have a serious blow. But that doesn't mean that they're down and out and they're going to lose. We'll say they as in the bulls. And now as we switch this off to the 400-minute time frame, because when you see something like this, the last 3 days, I mean, the previous period had a low and it had one of those cattail, or it closed near the open of the previous day after having a decent decline. That in itself is relatively bullish, but not so much, or definitely not at a good probability odds rate when it's in this downtrend where it has resisted the 18 average band on 3 occasions so far. So then we want to see more towards those moves within the 400-minute time frame, and what we see within such is that it had its U, it had its V-shaped formation, which means it sold off hard and it rallied, well in this case, just as fast. It is now reaching in within this big time, at least before declining 18 average. That's the case when you go straight down, which was the case on these 3 periods down, and this one as well thereafter. And now that it's in this point, its band flattens out, you get to the stage of what's the story. After several beatdowns in a row within this, it's having its attempt to end the dreadful down move, and it's doing so right now within the 18. So now that it's made that statement that it's trying to defeat it, you know it's like a bulls versus bears, and pretty much 6,000 even I think would be a key support level, and resistance up to about, even though it hasn't hit there yet, about 63.80. Short term, I would consider that to be where the battleground would be fought. So if the market can get above 6,400, it would be looking to make a nice leg higher, and thus more reason and more statements being made in the further ending of the big down move. But if it breaks down below 6, we're looking at continuation of what we have been seeing quite often, which is several lower highs and lower lows. Okay, so the next one, let's take a look so we can see this move further. Let's just go down to the single-hour time frame. And there's a lot to be said about this story here, especially with just the most recent period that has got price action down from what is in here. Highs not seen technically since like way back in the earlier part here, but regardless of the fact, it got above or to this level of resistance. This was a monstrous size move which followed with very low volatility. And anytime a big up or down move happens, it's time to digest the situation. And of course, long term, as it's been going down, we've been having situations of like sideways with Bitcoin. Bitcoin broke or is breaking below 6,400, and it hasn't been able to do anything since. Other than this one move, of course, the statement, the attempt to end the nasty decline. And as it was digesting its gain that it had, it never sold off, at least not much at all. In fact, it made this nice little curve shape pattern within what would some consider that of a bull flag. But as this thing was rallying up, we can see it's had a monstrous move on this period. This is a 1 hour time frame. There is 6 minutes and 42 seconds left, so the hour is almost done. Thus, it is 8:54 a.m. Eastern time as I'm doing this. It's obviously broken down below this low. So just as I needed to see more over just the on the situation of just these 3 days in here, and I could only do that by looking at a shorter term time frame. I'm in the same boat here as far as what's been going on with this current period. So I'm best probably to look at this on a 1 to 5 minute time frame. So I think I'm going to be using even the 10-minute might work for this. So yes, there we have it. Now, what I've been mentioning so many times before lately, and lately seems to be the entire year, and maybe a bit more, is that whenever a key move is going to happen, watch for the fake in the opposite direction. This thing rallied, but it rallied after this failed breakdown, breaking a key level. Now, a move is a situation when something gets above a key point, and within this, there were key points, there was resistance here, a little bit of resistance here, and it didn't get above the other one. But you noticed how beautiful this setup was, where they have this, again, this setup I think is a very good one. So you have this rally point up to here, definitely getting above this key level of resistance to make the failed breakdown look something, or the breakout rather, have that box shape formation. Now sometimes they'll throw you a twist, because is it possible that the failed break move might be this now? And I don't know the answer to that, but I do realize I've seen a lot of good up and down moves with Bitcoin, and they're going to continue on further, and I am not shocked by the least these days for having a good break higher, have a failed move that precedes it lower, and the opposite on a down move. Thank you for tuning in to this morning's video, and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.